Hello everyone and welcome in today's webinar. My name is Gzim and I'm account manager for security portfolio at PECB, also the organizer of this webinar. As you are already informed, we organize a weekly webinar in regular basis covering different topics and areas. In this webinar we will hear the iteration of other standards and good practices can enhance the deployment of ISO 22301 and vice versa. In addition, the impact of not having this iteration will be covered as well. This session will be hosted by PECB trainer and partner, Mr. Sidney Modenesi. Mr. Modenesi has more than 30 years experience in business continuity and a strong background in ICT. He has been the BCI forum leader in Brazil since 2014 and has been involved as a technical expert for ISO 22301 and the BS 25999 and an active MBCI by the Business Continuity Institute in 2006. I hope this webinar will help you understand the major points about this standard and this implication. If you have any question, you can write them in question box in the right-hand control panel, or you can use the option to raise your hand and we will answer to all of your questions. Please, Sidney, you may continue now, if you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gzim. It is a pleasure to be here today making this webinar for you. Although it's my first experience in a webinar, so really it's a little bit awkward without feeling if you are enjoying it or not, if you understand what I'm saying or not. By any chance, if I do not make myself clear, please do raise your hand and I will rephrase it in plain Portuguese, okay? Is it a deal? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone in this webinar. We have people from different locations all over the world. Oh, just Mark Fire from Back to the Future just arrived to join this webinar. Hello, Marty. Thank you very much. Gzim already did my introduction. I've been around for quite a while. Back in '79, I was in UK writing fault-tolerant traffic control systems. In '86, I wrote my first DRP for the largest credit card operation in Brazil, running IBM mainframes. In 1996, I became a full business continuity practitioner. In '98, I went through the DRRI exam certification. In 2000, I started the Stro Brazil, mainly because of with a partnership with the former Stro systems in US. And then 2006, I got my MBCI certification from BCI. So I've been around quite a while. I saw many things. I presented, I attended many things. I saw many things being built, developed, and I'm here today to share a little bit of my experience and knowledge with you. And here's the portfolio of my company. What I'll cover today is the impact or interactions between, I will refer to ISO 22301 as simply 22301. I will skip the ISO piece. It really is not needed because we know what we're talking about. The interaction between 22301 and other standards, or the lack that we'll face if we do not have these interactions with other standards and good practices. It is not my intention to have 100% coverage with all other standards and good practices. Maybe local standards or good practices I'm not aware of. So if I miss it, really anything relevant, please let me know when I update this presentation for future usage in future webinars. Well, before we start, item 42 in 22301 says the organization should have a process in place to monitor new regulations or legal requirements that may affect either the organization or interested party. Well, we could use the same approach to monitor what has been released in the market regarding business continuity standards or related standards, and also good practices around. I would suggest that the business continuity department in your organization be responsible for this task. A little bit of history. As Mother Earth, at the beginning there was darkness, we had nothing, until unfortunately 9/11, when we had the terrorist attack to the World Trade Center. Up to that point, there was no formal documentation, no good practices, no standard, nothing related to business continuity. At that point, major consulting companies had their own methodology with maybe some common sense among them, but really not any formal framework to support business continuity. Until in 2002, BCI released the first version of the GPG, which stands for Good Practice Guidelines. In 2003, BSI, the British Standard Institute, released the PAS 56, a guide for business continuity management. PAS stands for Public Accepted Specification, which is, let's say, the very first step in UK to develop a standard. It starts with public specification. PAS 56, we may consider it as the grandmother of the 22301. In 2005, unfortunately, there was another terrorist attack in London, the London bombings. So until 2005, only two formal documents around. 2006, BSI released PAS 77 for ICT services, the Code of Practice. Finally, in 2006, British Standard Institute released 25399, the Code of Practice, which was the first certifiable standard for business continuity. 25399 has been very well accepted worldwide. Many countries translated this English standard into their own local language and became the local standard for business continuity. Countries like Brazil, of course, I know that, Spain, I can't remember all the countries, but I would say around 30, maybe 40 different countries use 25399 at their own local business continuity standard. In 2007, we have the release of the second part of 25399, the management piece, the specifications, excuse me, also translated in different countries. 2008, the 25777 for IT continuity, which is, let's say, the improvement of PAS 77. And in 2011, we are talking now just around the corner, a few years ago, the first 2731 ISO standard for ICT readiness for business continuity that has been released before or prior to 22301. Also, for those of you in the banking and the financial industry, you may be familiar with the sound management of operational risk released by the BIS, which stands for the Bank of International Settlements, located in Basel, Switzerland. So if your country is subscribed to the Basel Agreement, so financial institutions and the banking industry has to comply or has to follow those principles. Principle 10 on this documentation deals with resilience and business continuity for the financial institutions. 2012, finally, we had the release of 22301, the requirement, which is another certifiable standard for business continuity, replacing 25399. And then we had the release of 22313, which is the implementation piece. So see that in the recent years, we have the release of many relevant standards for business continuity. I would say in the last couple of years, we had the release of has been released more standards and good practices than in the previous 10 years. And I expect more standards and good practices to be released and updated in future years. There are many in draft version or final draft versions today. When I say the 22300 family of standards, it is not only 301 and 313. So far, we have 14 different standards belonging to the 22300 family of standards, starting with the 300 itself, which is terminology, until the very recent standards released this year, one for BIA, by example, which is the 317. PECB will have another webinar shortly about this standard. This is a technical specification, which is not a certifiable standard, but it's a good framework to run BIAs. Guidelines for supply chain, which is key to business continuity, because we can't make sure that our organization will survive a disruptive incident if our supply chain is not up and running as well. Other standard release this year, message structure for exchange of information, so on and so forth. So only this year, 3 new standards has been released in the 22300 family of standards. Okay, let's just start in the 22301. Chapter 0, Introduction. Organizations may have different topologies, may have one building, may have many buildings, different infrastructures, technological infrastructure, voice infrastructure, telecom infrastructures, maybe local data centers, different ICT service providers, things on the cloud, many things going, many different infrastructures. And of course, to support this infrastructure, we may have a very simple supply chain, or we may have a very complex supply chain. All this helping the organization to provide product services through business processes. 22301 covers all this in the PDCA life cycle in a continuous improvement way to make sure that the organization is better prepared to deal with disruptive incidents. But unfortunately, things may fail, and if it do fail, then we have a disruptive incident. We have organizations may have to move to an alternate facility with a small, not necessarily very small, but with a small infrastructure to recover key product services using maybe the same or different business processes to recover all these products and services within a time frame, which is the MTPD, to a certain business level, business service level, which is the MBCI. And hopefully, after recovering everything that is relevant to the organization, we may return to our initial location, or maybe to a new facility to recover the remaining business key process products and services. Okay, 01 general business continuity contributes to a more resilient society. Because of what I said, dealing with the PDCA life cycle understanding, the key risks and implementing controls on them, and developing plans and make sure those plans do work, we work when needed. We are building a more resilient organization. We are building a more resilient society. Talking about resilience, we have the British Standard 65,000 released last year, which is a guidance for organization resilience. 22301 does not refer to 65,000 because it's a British standard, but it's worth to go through it and make sure to learn how to deal with corporate business resilience. We also know that 22301 uses the PDCA life cycle, which is also used by other ISO standards like 9001, 14001, 27001, so on and so forth. This structure is known by the BSI, the British Standard Institute, as the high-level structure. As Gesine mentioned at the beginning, I'm also work as a part-time consultant for BSI. That's why I'm very familiar with BSI and the BS standards. This is the PDCA lifecycle for 22301. On the left-hand side, we have the requirements for business continuity may be defined or expected by our stakeholders. In the middle, we have the PDCA lifecycle, and then on the right-hand side, we have what we will deliver to our stakeholders, not necessarily what they requested for or they expect for. What we are delivering must be in line with the risk appetite of the organization, which is addressed in other standards I will cover shortly. And then we have the program, making sure we are making improvements in our preparedness. That's why we are building a better resilient organization or a better resilient society. At the very end of 22301, we have the bibliography, which refers to 26 different documents from ISO standards to foreign standards like the US NFPA 1600 and other documentation for other countries. This documentation, of course, has been continuously being updated, but not updated in the 22301. So there may be other relevant documents around that is not addressed in this current version of 22301. Finally, let's start. Chapter 4 is really the first operational chapter of the standard. So, item 4.1, understanding the organization and its context. Organization shall identify and document. As I mentioned, 22301 is a certifiable standard, which means certification auditors will go through your documentation to make sure that what is written is what you are doing is what is written, and what you are doing and what is written complies with the requirements of the standard. So all this documentation will require a format, what I will cover later on, but someone has to address and identify and document all these activities, functions, services, internal flows, partnerships, supply chain, and so on. ISO 9001, which is a quality management system, states that organization should have a business unit responsible for business mapping through process mapping. For those of you familiar in doing BIAs, you know what the nightmare it is to run BIAs without any sort of process mapping or business mapping. There is no way you can build internal flows or external flows or refer one process executed in one department with maybe the same process executed in another department because, well, maybe naming convention is not the same, or one department is referring to a process while the other department is referring to the product delivered by that process. So I would say that a sort of process mapping is key to deliver a very good BIA. Also, 2231 states that organization should have a link between the business continuity policy with the risk management policy or the risk management strategy, which is in line with the risk appetite I mentioned before in the PDCA life cycle. Also, there is a note in chapter 823 that risk assessment may be conducted in the organization using 31,000 risk management standard. As I mentioned also, if you're in the banking industry or in the financial industry, your organization may also have to comply with the Basel Agreement, the Sound Management of the Operational Risk Principle 10, business resilience and the continuity as part of the corporate operational risk. Basically here, we are dealing with residual risk, things that skip it by the controls in place. When we say 31,000 family of standards, we have other standards, including this family, starting from the Guide 73, which has the vocabulary for risk management. Also, verbiage in the organization is very important to make sure everybody, when they say or they state one concept, everybody does understand it in the same way. So glossaries or vocabularies or standard terminology is also very important to have a common language across the organization. Chapter 5, Leadership. Top management shall establish a business continuity policy. Well, policies, we know, addresses role, responsibilities, things, maybe they have, we may have other documentation complementing the policy, what things that people have to do, things that we have to comply to in accordance with the policy defined. We have a standard for compliance, which is the 19600 compliance management systems guidelines. So maybe your internal controls department or your compliance control department may decide to use this standard to make sure that the business continuity policy is being fully executed within your organization. Chapter 7, Support. Organizations shall determine the need for internal and external communication within the business continuity management system, which includes what to communicate, to when to communicate, to whom communicate. Well, this is addressed in the 22320 standard, especially social security emergency management, especially in Annex B, which has a very extensive list of tasks to help us to implement a communication program. It is worth also to go through this annex and check it to improve our communication program. 752, creating and updating. Organization must create and update documented information. As I mentioned, certification is done basically checking the documented information. And this documented information shall have a structure. Documents shall have identification, title, date, version number, language, format, etc., etc. Well, ISO 9001 may help us to set this documentation template and also to control different versions of different documents that will be included as part of our documented information to support the implementation of 22301. Chapter 8, Operation. This is the largest chapter in 22301. For those familiar with the old 25309, basically at least 6, 7, maybe chapters of 25309 are included in Chapter 8 Operation of 22301. Starts with 822 BIA. Organization shall implement, establish, implement, and maintain a process and documented process to evaluate what is important for the organization, key services, products, process, recovery time frames, dependencies, and so on and so forth. Well, we have, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we have the recently released 22317 technical specification to run BIA. PECB will have shortly another webinar to address this standard. Also, BCI in the Good Practices Guidelines version 2013, from pages 52 to 63, address very well how to run BIAs, from initial BIA, strategic BIA, tactical BIA, until the operational BIA. Usually standards, they say what we have to do, they don't tell us what to do. On the other hand, the GPG from BCI help us with what to do instead of, help us with what to do instead of what to do. Risk assessment 823. Organizations shall establish, implement, and maintain a formal documented risk assessment process. This process can be made in accordance with ISO 31000. Well, maybe risk assessment is done in another department within your business unit, within your organization, but these two processes or management systems, they have to be in line, or they have to have links between these two systems. So we can use 31,000 principles and guidelines to help us on these, or maybe other organizations, mainly financial organizations, banking industry, may prefer to use COSO, to manage corporate risk. COSO started back many years ago to manage risks in the banking and financial industry. From version to version has been improved, moving towards corporate risk management. It's much more a corporate decision which management system to use, although 31,000 is a standard, and the other, and COSO we may consider it as being a good practice. But any of these two will help us to implement a process to manage corporate risks. We may group risks in five different groups. Excuse me. Main group 1, ICT, Information Communication Technology, where maybe was the beginning of business continuity back in the 50s, maybe early 60s, with DRPs. Then we have main group number 2, which is information security, which is a nightmare for business continuity. Really dealing with information security, leaking of information or invasions, they are really very hard to deal with, or develop recovery strategies for those. We may have risks in our facilities or premises, supply chain, and human assets. These risks can be triggered by different reasons, from climate changes to terrorist attacks or fires or whatever, but they will lead at the end to causing maybe disruptive incidents. And any of these risks, they will require some level of control or managed system to mitigate any of them. In the IST family of standards, we have ISO 20000 service management. Organizations may prefer to use ITIL. ISO 20000 and ITIL are very in line with, again, 20,000 is a standard, while ITIL is much more a good practice. We may also, organizations may also use COBIT, which is much more a tool at the beginning developed for auditors to audit the ICT departments. Also, COBIT has been improved over the years. Version 5 is very good. I would prefer to use COBIT as a control tool and implement the controls using ISO 20000 or ITO instead of using COBIT as the implementation tool. There are things very important to manage and control risks in the ICT area. Incident response that may trigger or may be triggered by disruptive incidents. Problem management that may lead at the end, if not well treated, to a disruptive incident. Change management that will help us to keep and maintain our documented information updated. CMDB, there's no way we can have a good change management procedure or process if we don't have a CMDB, which stands for Configuration Management Database, that holds all our configuration items documented. So every time we change anything, we update the information. So then we go through the change management process, and then we can update or make sure the documentation is updated accordingly. Information security. We have the 27,000 family of standards, mainly 27001, which is another certifiable standard, and 27002, which is the code of practice. If your organization uses or is implementing ISO 20000, there is also a standard, the 27013, to help to implement those two standards to make sure the integration is working accordingly. For facilities and premises, if your organization is in the chemical industry, oil industry, petrochemical industry, etc., you may have issues with environmental. So we have the 14,000 family of standards to help us with environmental issues. For 14,001 requirements with guidance for use will help us very much in implementing controls to protect the environment. Also, there is a document available at the SO store with all the 14,000 family of standards. And there are many other standards related to facilities and infrastructure for electrical connections, cabling, engineering, and so on and so forth. There's really quite a bunch of them. I mentioned at the very beginning, it's key for the organization to make sure that supply chain is also up and running in the event of a disruptive incident, especially if it's a large-scale disruptive incident. For supply chain, we have the 28,000 family of standards, starting with 28,001. Security systems for supply chain, technical specification, guidelines for supply chain, and also there is a British standard public accepted specification 7000 to help us to identify risks in our supplier during the pre-qualification process before this supplier becomes another risk in your supply chain. And finally, for human assets, we have the British standard family of 18,000, 80,001 and 2, occupational health and safety management systems. And also ISO as still a draft, not formal delivered or published standard 45001, requirements for occupational health and safety management systems. So, as you see, there are quite a lot of standards that may help us to implement, to identify risks and implement control on those risks in many different areas in our organization. Item 842.843 deals with incident response structure and warning and communication. Organizations shall establish a structure to respond to a disruptive incident and also to implement and maintain procedures to detect an incident, regularly monitoring the incident, and so on and so forth. I mentioned for the ICT, ISO 20,000 addresses response incident in the ICT side, but there are other standards to help us on that. 22.320, emergency management requirements for incident response, 22.322, guidelines for public warning, and also there's another standard for structure to exchange information among organizations or between the organization and public services or public authorities. 844, organizations shall establish documented procedures to respond to disruptive incidents, and so on. Here we are talking about our plans, right? Plans are considered in the certification process as a documented information that it is recommended to have a standard format, controls, where it is stored, the language, media formats, and so on. So again, ISO 9001 help us in establishing this template, and also the procedures to control and review timely all this documented information. Item 85, exercise and testing. Organization shall exercise and test its business continuity procedures. Up to now, really, we have nothing, right? We generated quite a lot of documentation that may hopefully work when it is needed. That's why we have to exercise and test to make sure that all this documentation will work when needed. And also, there is no way, I can't see any way we can promote continuous improvement without establishing KPIs, key performance indicators, if not in our exercises and testing. So there's another standard for that, which is the 22.398, the guidelines for exercises, which help us to implement a exercise program where within the program we run exercises, we run tests. It is established, it is another requirement in 22.301 that we improve over time. So 22.398 help us to make sure that our exercise program is improving over time. Chapter 9, performance evaluation. Organizations shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals and so on. Well, there's another standard for that. 19,011, guidelines for auditing management systems. Maybe we have other management systems within our company. Maybe 9,000, maybe 14,000, maybe 27,000 family, and so on. So we can use the same standard to conduct the internal audits for all the management systems we have in place in our organization. And also, as I've already mentioned before, Internal controls department or the compliance department may also be using 19,600 compliance management systems guidelines to make sure that everybody, all departments and staff are doing their responsibilities as defined in the policies for the management systems we have in place. Well, other relevant documentation we may use. We are reaching the end of this webinar, and I'd like to make sure we have some time at the very end for questions, not necessarily answers. Do not forget to make sure you know all your local laws, regulations, and the local standards that do apply to your business continuity management system or your business continuity program, as stated in item 42 in 22301. Also, if we have a major incident or even a disruptive incident, for sure, our organization will run in a crisis. There is no reference for crisis in 2301 except in the glossary. And British Standard Institute has the BS 11200 that deals with guidance and good practice for crisis management. Also, we cannot consider a successful recovery of our organization if we do not take into account human aspects. People are a vital piece in our recovery process, in our recovery strategy. Again, BSI has public draft 25,111, belonging to the old family of 25XXX, which deals with human aspects on business continuity. Also, I can't imagine implementing a business any management system, but in this specific case, business continuity management system without having any sort of project management in place. We have another ISO standard for that, which is 21,500. Or maybe your organization may be familiar with PMM or Agile Scrum methodology. I personally prefer to use PMM. Let's say we are implementing our exercise program. I will control my exercise program using PMM, and I would control individual exercises using Agile or Scrum methodology. Short run, with a date to start, a date to finish, with clearly defined deliverables at the end. For US-based organizations or for US companies in foreign countries, not in US, not based in US, maybe you have to comply with NFPA 1600. Also for manufacturing mainly, maybe your organization is very well familiar with Six Sigma, which is much more a quality control procedure. But if it runs in the blood, if it runs in the veins of your organization, use it. It's a very helpful tool. TOGAF and so on and so forth. Closing. When we say one organization is looking or seeking a certification, most likely this organization will be at or close to a maturity level 3 or more in 1 to 5 scale. So a certified organization may require, a certified management system will require the organization to be at maturity level 3, and very likely other supporting management systems will also have to be very close or at level 3 of maturity. So as long as we are improving all the maturity of all these management systems, we are improving the resilience of the organization, and consequently the preparedness of our business continuity management program and the quality of our BCMS. So it's very important to make sure that all these management systems or all these standards are running smoothly in an integrated way. We are not necessarily seeking certification in all of them, but it's important to make sure that all of them are in place, they do exist, and there are departments, business units responsible for those. ISO standards can be purchased at the ISO store and the website, British standards at the BSI shop at the website. The BCI Good Practice Guideline can be purchased at the BCI website. It is free for BCI members. And FPI 1600 can be downloaded for free at the FPA 600 website. Thank you very much. Here you have my contacts if you want to. I have quite a lot of other materials at LinkedIn and SlideShare mainly. Now I will hold the word back to Gezin and for questions if you have to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sidney, for your presentation. And we have a few questions, and it's time for question. And I encourage all of the participants to do their question. So we have the first question is there any reliable source that PDCA is the best model to use for implementation of ISO 22301?
Well, a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I went back to university and met my old teachers, and I said, well, I think I'm looking for a master's degree or a PhD. What would be the best approach? You know, I have certifications on ISO 22301 and other standards and so on and so forth. And my masters, they said, well, you know, to get a PhD, all these certifications you have will not help you. To get a PhD, you have to prove that the framework you are proposing or using has a scientific base. I don't know if there is any scientific base that says that PDCA is the best approach to implement 22301. But on the other hand, when using 22301, PDCA is within the standard. So we have to use it, either we like it or not. If there is a better way to do it, I would suggest to use it, making sure we are not causing any non-conformity with 22301, if it's the case to get certification. And also, I expect shortly, in a couple of years maximum, that we go through a revision of 22301. So at that time, we may submit improvements or comments to improve 22301.
Okay, the second question is, does the implementation of these standards affect the organization structure overall?
I would say yes and no. I would say yes, because maybe at the very beginning of the implementation of 22301, like 27001, maybe we do not have a department or a business unit clearly defined to be responsible for either business continuity or information security, right? So in that sense, yes, we'll have to make some changes in the organization in conformity with the policy implemented. In the other hand, I would say no, because if you are looking for to improve the preparedness of the organization, all these tasks will have to be shared among all the departments. So basically, we'll be adding an extra set of tasks for the departments and business units to help the organization to recover in the event of a disruptive incident. But for sure, we will change the culture of the organization, which was very clearly addressed in the old 25999, inserting business continuity culture in the organization.
Thank you for answer. The third question is there any special team which deals with business continuity and make necessary improvements or changes?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Let's start from a business continuity policy. This policy will define, well, it is a requirement on 22301. There is a business unit responsible for business continuity. So this unit will be the team in charge of the overall tasks to recover the organization. I don't like the idea in having a central department responsible for maintaining and developing, maintaining, exercising, and everything, all the cycle of business continuity. I much prefer a shared structure where we have like the compliance department or internal controls department, where we have a department responsible for managing the system, while tasks are shared among all departments defined in the business continuity policy.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sidney, again for this highly informative presentation. I believe the attendees had a chance to learn something new today, and I suggest you take time and see our future webinar that we will be hosting. Next Wednesday, we will host a webinar topic which is called ICS Security Management System using ISO 27001 standard. So I hope you will find an interest and you can join by joining on our links that we will promote in the future, in the next week. So thank you again to all of the participants, and we wish to meet again in the future.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, team. Thank you, PECB, and forgive me for my bad English during the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.